own space, justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends. Something. Oh, I think we're fine. Hello, my friends, and welcome to this Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian. Joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
The fun of doing it live.
Yeah, always. Your co-host, Julie.
We have stocked up on root beer. We are ready for the inevitable fall of U.S. civilization.
Okay. No, now I have to ask, which brand of root beer? This is very important.
It is A&W root beer, zero sugar. Unfortunately, no caffeine.
Okay,
A&W.
That's acceptable.
It's no dads, but they don't have dads where we're at.
Well, I mean, and there's another brand that's even better that I can't remember the name of now. But A&W is acceptable. I like almost all root beer. I like almost all root beer, but not all root beer. Not all of it's good. Also joining us is your co-host, Thorsten.
Hello, and professional as always.
Jacob was not feeling up to joining us today, which is understandable given the time change. Right now it's May. March 19th, and so in America our daylight saving time switch happened, but not theirs. Not the Europeans. So yeah, we're in that kind of weird zone where things are kind of fucked in that regard. Finally joining us is your co-host, David.
Being unemployed doesn't mean that I have nothing to do. I am so tired of all the freaking paperwork today. I am so tired.
Paperwork for what? Paperwork for what?
Sending into the unemployment agency, sending into the payment agency or whatever it's called, getting my how can I describe it? The papers that prove that I actually took part of this course this spring here, and then send it to all the required parties. Then trying to figure out where my forklift certification is, and yeah, it's a mess.
That's nearly as complicated as German bureaucracy. Great, you took the worst from us.
Yeah, thank you, Germany.
California's unemployment is also not great. So there's a lot of paperwork, and you have to check in weekly with them and everything. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work being unemployed. It's a lot. People don't understand that. Being poor and being in poverty is a lot of work. It's just surviving. So folks, in our continuing effort to stay positive during these whatever times you want to call it, interesting, dark, I don't know what you want to call these, strange, hilarious. I wanted to do a topic about community. Now, one of the things I've heard a lot of people say is to help get through this time, find a place in your community and help each other. And so you're seeing more people volunteer. You're seeing more people. May I offer you an egg? You're seeing more people volunteering and whatnot, and people joining, protests and whatnot. It's great. But then there are people like me who don't do well with crowds, who don't do well with other people in person, and find much more solace in being online and talking to people online. It's much easier. Like most of my social upbringing was online through bulletin board systems and CompuServe and Prodigy and all these old like pre-web internet services where you would actually dial in to talk to people. And so I wanted to talk today about not only are there any positive online communities that we know about that we can join, but what one should seek out in looking for a good online community. And I wanted to start with ours, the Space Game, especially the Discord. We have a Discord, if you're unaware. It's discord.spacegamejunkie.com if you want to join. And we have worked very hard to make it a safe space I know that phrase is triggering for some, but it's a valid phrase. We worked very hard to keep it positive and safe, to keep negativity siloed. So there are certain channels where we only talk about politics. There are certain channels where we only talk about negative things, because most of it's about gaming, obviously. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work maintaining a community like that. It's a lot of work. Basically, we vet people manually. There's no automated anything. People come into a waiting room and we vet them manually before we let them in. And it works. It works great. I don't know if that'll continue working if we grow a lot, but I'm going to keep it because it's great and it works really well. And that's how we've been able to, for the most part, keep out Trump voters, Republicans, spammers, bots.
We've had a few that we've had to ban from the community, but we'll get to that later.
But not many. Not many. On the whole, it's been very, very low. We have not had to do that very often. But we can talk about that in terms of how do we say it?
Well, it comes down to this. Mm-hmm. When people show you who they are, believe them. When someone basically says they're a sociopath without having to say they're a sociopath, you don't need to have them in the community anymore. And one dev ended up being that. So we removed that person from the community because when it comes down to the idea that you get the community that you curate. Mm-hmm. If you have a community online, if you're in charge of a community online, you get the community that you curate. So if you don't get rid of people who are toxic from that community, it will drag everyone else down and drive away people who aren't toxic.
Well, it's interesting you bring up curation because I wanted to touch on that because Discord is just one of many places where you can find community. And I know there are toxic shitholes like Reddit and Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I'm calling it Twitter. I'm not one for dead naming, but I am not calling it X. Ever. A lot of these online communities are full of awful, awful people. Terrible, terrible people, racists and everything. But if you curate it properly, you can actually find worth in just about any of these online communities. But again, you have to curate it. Now, how do you do that? For example, on Twitter, you have lists, and it takes a while. It takes a long time to curate just the right lists on Twitter, which is true of just any service, really. It takes a while to curate properly. But if you curate a list on Twitter, you can mostly avoid the stupid. Now, whether you should use Twitter or not, I'm not going to tell you whether you should use Twitter or not. Yes, it's being run by a Nazi. We all know this, but I'm not going to tell you whether or not to use it. If you do choose to use it, that's your choice. But there are ways to make it better for you personally, to make it a more positive place. Like I have a friend. I'll talk about Reddit for a minute. I have a friend who just doom scrolls Reddit, and he just goes to the front page and just doom scrolls Reddit. I'm trying to tell him that's the worst possible way to interact with Reddit. is to see what they show you. Is the worst. I guess that's true of just about any online service. But with Reddit, you can set up, kind of similar to Twitter, you can set up lists where you only see posts from the communities that you put on that list. And so you can have a list just for news, I have a list just of like game deals, for example. Excuse me, I apologize. So there are ways to make any, even the shittiest communities. Well, I don't think you can curate a place like 4chan or anything, you know what I mean? But like the bigger ones like Reddit and Facebook and Twitter, you can curate to the point where you can only basically, and yeah, some people will say you're making a bubble. Some people say you're putting yourself in a bubble. And sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes that's what you need to get through the day. I mean, our Discord community is a bubble, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Having certain bubbles is fine as long as you don't get stuck in those bubbles. You know what I mean? As long as you don't wallow in those bubbles and allow yourself some reality now and then again, just to see what's going on in the world, you'll have a good balance. That's what I try and do every day. So I wanted to talk to you guys in the chat and my co-host. Is there anything else you guys can think of that makes a community positive that you've encountered in your own internet dealings?
Yes, sort of. Go ahead. No, you go.
You go ahead, Julie. You go, Julie, because I've got a lot more to say.
Okay, well, the thing is, and this is the breaking point for just about every community I've tried to be part of, except for this one. You can vet people all you want, but this depends on people being honest. And I was part of a community. Somebody said to an acquaintance of mine, and they start blasting people of color and not knowing that the person they're talking to is of color, my friend / acquaintance. And that's what drove her out of the community. And I've been part of communities where they are anything but LGBTQ friendly. And that's my big thing, because we live in a world where it's increasingly dangerous to be part of that community, especially the T part. There was a young man who was tortured for a month recently. And even when someone pretends not to be, if it really push comes to shove, and this is what's important about this community, because if they'll say, oh, do you know any really good community? I said, this one, full stop, that's it. That's one of the first things, because that, and I've been in communities where people seem to be really nice, but, it ends up being kind of a good old boys club. It's like, well, we'll let the poor little woman play this daisy. Just stay in your corner and leave the adults alone, is one example. So it's just, that's the important thing. If somebody being part of a community like this one, where the proof of the pudding is in the eating, shall we say. There's been many examples when Spaz has defended the community I'm part of, and I'm eternally grateful for that, because let's just face it, to be part of the community I'm in, whether I like it or not, it's a dangerous thing anymore, and you got to be really careful where you go. And I've encountered a lot of communities where they will say they are, but this is the first one I've been in where they really do something about it. And when someone like Spaz says the community is LGBTQ plus friendly, it really is. And even though it means being being in a little bubble, when the world gets as dangerous as it is, sometimes you got to be in that little bubble, and you're my own little circle of friends who, if I'm out in public and somebody disparages me, I don't have to say a word. They just leap down somebody's throat, So that's why this community means a lot to me. Next.
I think someone else. Yeah, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I'll say this much. Over the last almost 20 years, I got my start in moderation as a chat moderator for a site which is no longer active, but I know that a lot of people in our community used to go there. A site called cuteoverload.com. And I used to be a chat moderator for that site back in 2006, 2007-ish. And ever since then, I have been a chat moderator, a game admin, community manager. I've been moderating somewhere, in some places concurrently since then. And I've taken that experience to our community, and that's part of the reason I make sure that we have the community that we curate. That anyone who decides they need to be a jerk to people in our community, they get something from me, which is usually a banhammer if they deserve it. Or at the very least a talking to. And this place, this community is one where if you, in a general sense, attack the people within it, I'm going to identify as a fucking problem for you.
Not an attack helicopter?
No, and that joke should fucking die.
I know, I agree.
We've kicked out people for using that joke.
Oh, I agree.
Because yeah.
Horrible joke. That doesn't seem to die. It just seems I still see it used every so often. I think I just saw it a few days ago on a Facebook thread.
And I had a friend. I didn't unfriend the individual. They live in another country. But I just said, okay, well, everybody deserves a second and third chance, I guess. And it was a picture of this famous bicycle race that goes through France. And there was a motorcycle like leading the way for getting ready for it to start. And it was like, oh, see, a motorcycle identifies as a bicycle. And I said, man, at least try and find a new joke if you're going to slam people.
They don't have any humor. Now, this is a rant, and I know this is a tangent, but they don't have any humor. They think certain things are funny, and they're just the lamest, unfunniest things on the planet. It's amazing how lacking their humor is. It's just it always amazes me. But I think to have genuine humor, I think you have to have some empathy, and that is something a lot of the people that we're talking about are lacking.
That is a good point, though. That comes into building a community, because it comes up. How do you build a community? Well, it starts with empathy.
Yeah.
Because if you start your community around the idea that punching down on other people is okay, the moment you've opened yourself up to that and you don't moderate that out, if you can't moderate that out, or if you choose not to, then your community is already toxic.
Yeah. From jump. Yeah. It's just sad because I've joined. I don't join many Discord servers. I'm on. I know you can join a lot more than that, but I don't have the bandwidth mentally. But I was on another one the other day, and they were talking about supporting Trump, and I'm like, should I leave? Should I get out of here? Like, I didn't. Because there are other good people on there, but like I was really tempted to just leave.
The problem becomes a lot of times in that regard in many communities I've been part of is people don't seem to care unless it affects them personally.
Oh God, yeah.
And I mean, a case in point, people say, well, what do I care if they cut Medicare? Well, my case in point is I oversaw every federally insured nursing home in a 3-state region. And I said, if you don't think nursing home administrators are cutthroat enough to dump your grandmother out in the street, they will,
Oh,
without a thought.
Absolutely, they will, because
And
they're businesses. Nursing homes are businesses like anything else. They don't care about the people, you know?
That's why, when I was part of the one community and, and their favorite game was DayZ, and I said, I've interviewed the guy twice who invented the thing. And yes, I know about the problems that he has with that community. But the thing is, it's like people can be all talk, but their actions often speak louder than words. And like I said, you can't always vet that out. But this is why I appreciate when somebody is vigilant enough to do something like that. And it's sad to me that human nature is just like that, and it's not a U.S. thing. It's not a European thing. A lot of times I've grown up seeing that. People would see my mother and they'd say, "Oh, well," one person once said, "Your mother walks funny because she doesn't come to our church," and my response is, my mother spent her life teaching deaf people how to speak. What did you do with your life? And people go through life judging a book by its cover. What, I'm not cute enough to be part of your community? Is that it? Or, and I can think of any one of a number of comebacks like Congressman McBride when she was wrong pronoun recently. And it's nice enough that another Democrat came to her defense, but he didn't really need to. Congressman McBride simply said, "Thank you, Madam Chairwoman," to the guy who wrong pronouned her. But it's important to have someone like Spaz and like Brian who are willing to take the heat when, like me, when I come home from work, I have to take heat all day long and angry people because there's a lot of money involved. And when I get home, I need to be part of a community where I know there's somebody who's going to be the community bulldog, so to speak, like Brian and especially Spaz. So I owe Spaz a big one, allowing me to be part of this community and having a safe space.
Safe spaces are important. If people will say, okay, that's a bubble. But going back to that, for some people, they don't have a bubble to go back to.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think about that. I think about that when I think about this topic, is that even if only for a bit, we are a bubble for them, a safe place for them to be, then that's worth the time and effort that we put into it.
I mean, you can be as introverted as hell. I'm very introverted, but we still are a tribal people. We still seek out others for the most part. And even if we do it online, if we do it in person, it's necessary to find those safe places where we don't feel threatened. Because I don't talk about this a lot, but growing up, I was under threat all the time. Like, I didn't really have a safe space except for video games. I mean, I was under threat at home. I was under threat at school. On the way to and from, I was, bullied by local teens. So I didn't really, have much of a safe place at all, except in the world of video games. And that became a problem eventually. But everyone needs that. Everyone needs that place they can go to where they're not feeling threatened at any given moment. And it feels like it's getting harder and harder to come by, It
takes work. It takes work to make a place like that exist and to maintain it.
Right. But even out in the world, I'm starting to feel like just a low level threat wherever I go. And I'm a straight white guy. And I'm starting to feel a low-level threat wherever I go, because there's so much anger in the world. There's just so much anger, and so much of it is unnecessary. And
without going into details and about where I work and who I work for, because I can't, but one of the most upsetting things to me is when you try and help people and you have someone on a daily basis who just is this absolute hate monger telling you stop helping people and you're a worthless human being and you never do anything. And despite the fact that, and it's not just me I'm talking about, that people who have been through this say, look, I can prove it. You want to see my job ratings? And yet people, it's like they only seem to care if they have theirs. And I've seen that in a lot of different communities. And I've talked to people who say, well, they're never going to come for me until I'm knocking on the door, and that happens. And I may kid around about being March and about no being in March near Chicago, and the only ice is in the schools. But that's exactly what's happened. And wow, it is so difficult to find a safe space. And if you end up finding a bubble anywhere, I thank God Fran's dad paid for the place I'm in, or we'd be frelled and at this point. And it just, any port in a storm, man. Any port in a storm.
And right now it's pretty stormy. Right now it's quiet. It's just so stormy right now. My God. So yeah, finding a good online community is not only tough, but it does take a lot of work. But you can find them. Like, I'm gonna bring up Steam because a lot of people think it's just a storefront, but it's also a social network. And there are some parts of Steam that are absolutely terrible. And this usually goes along with the game specifically. Like, you go to a Steam forum for any like big AAA game, and it's an awful trash fire of a place. But you go to a Steam forum for a smaller indie game, and a lot of times it's a much more positive community. And I think that stems from the fact that I think indie developers have a better time communicating with their audience because they don't have to filter it through press releases. They don't have to filter it through community managers. They can just talk directly to their fans. And so it's interesting to see this dichotomy in one social network that's dedicated solely to a positive thing like video gaming. And I don't get all the anger about video gaming. So much anger about video gaming. All woke and shit now. What the? Video gaming's always been woke. What are you doing?
And then you get some people who, well, actually that comes up to a interesting point, which has come up in our community previously. Before we had our current slate of co-hosts. The point I'm getting at here is about this idea of, well, there should always be free speech. And you run into people who are free speech absolutists that think that you should be able to say whatever you want to. The problem with that is that if you don't moderate, if you don't tamp down on that, people who are getting punched down on are going to say, well, I'm not protected here, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
I don't feel safe here, I'm going to leave.
And those same absolutionists hate the consequences of their speech. They absolutely hate that their speech has consequences.
Well, and I don't know if anybody remembers him or not, but Chris, my friend, has been on the show before.
I think
so.
He was on for our accessibility show.
Yeah.
Right.
what he talks about in this regard, and we talked about it in our other podcast, the last one, he talks about violating the social contract. And I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of absolute lack of understanding. Sometimes it's just absolute honest mistake. And here's an example that, it has a bearing. He has Stargardt, so he only has peripheral vision. And it's getting worse. But a while back, somebody walked up to him and said, "How do you fit the wheelchair in the car?" And it's like, what? And she absolutely had no idea. And he had said, like, I'm blind. I haven't got a mobility problem. And he was nice about it, but sometimes people say, well, I'm free to say whatever I want. But and this goes back many, many decades. And back to, I think, late 60s, early 70s, and there was a part of Chicago that is no longer there, but was a particularly nasty part in the far west side. And one day there's this story in the news about somebody from Texas who stops for ask for directions and gets shot dead in the housing projects. And nobody ever stopped to say, how did he ask for directions? And what did he say while he was asking for directions? Did somebody just said, oh, hey, or did he hurl some horrible epithet at somebody and then not expect any consequences? And I've told people on the Blue Line in Chicago that runs to O'Hare, I said, you can say horrible things to somebody and think it'll never come back to you. But in that person's eye, you represent the United States of America, and that's what they will think about the United States and about the ugly American, and you'll be the cause of that. And they always say, a satisfied customer tells one person, but a dissatisfied customer tells everybody. And that's part of my point is people don't think about the consequences at all when it comes to free speech. But sometimes, your free speech ends where somebody else's ears begin.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I guess, another thing about finding good communities is they're full of people who understand that their speech that their words matter. So many people think you go online and you could say whatever you want behind the safety of a screen, and it doesn't matter. But it does. Good.
Yeah, I really have to add something to this.
Go for it.
In my opinion, free speech ends at the point when you hurt others, and it's a simple thing. It's just the golden rule applied. Don't do anything to others that you won't have to come to you. And many people hide, as you said, hide behind a screen and think they can do everything they want, and that's simply unacceptable in my opinion. In any community,
Here's a word of caution in that regard. What Thornton just said. I was playing a game, and the developer, when asked about problems, he just was really nasty about it. And so I just said, well, a friend asked me to play the game, so I did for a while. And there was a person who was a particularly nasty individual in this small community and thought he was safe behind just his nom de plume. And I said, okay, let's do an experiment just from a name of a character. I said, how long will it take me to really find this? Within 5 minutes, I found his real name, where he lived, and where he went to college. And that's because people often use the same nickname from game to game. So you're not always as safe as you think you are on the internet.
I mean, it's always fun. There was this is going to make this a little timely, but there was a woman recently who wrote on a receipt that she wasn't going to tip someone and that they should go back to where they came from. And the internet does there's a part of the internet I love that doesn't let that shit stand. And so they found that woman and she got fired and everything. And he attempted to apologize, and it was the worst apology I think I'd ever heard. Wasn't really an apology. But yeah, I mean,
in cases like that, it's often they're not sorry that it happened.
No, they're sorry they got caught.
They're not. They're sorry that they got caught and they have to face consequences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because there's something in their heart, in their mind, that was broken enough that they did it in the first place.
It makes you wonder how it got broken. You know, makes you just wonder.
Well, there was an interesting article, and this is, and I don't remember whether it was MSNBC or BBC World News, but this person was called upon to testify in favor of an anti-trans law in his state. And he eventually came to testify, but after he talked to a bunch of trans people, he did a 180-degree turn. And sometimes people and sometimes it's because they're nasty, sometimes and just don't care. Sometimes it's they don't think. And real world example, this goes back 30 years. Somebody walked up to me once in an office, and no less in the foyer of the director's office over the 3-state region. And she walks up to me and said, "So, can you have an orgasm?" And without missing a beat, I just simply said, "Why, are you offering?" She never brought up the whole thing again.
What? Who says that in an office setting?
Great.
What?
Who says that in a professional? What the fuck?
I have had someone scream at me in a crowded office, "You can't be Christian and Buddhist. You have to make a decision." And again, without missing a beat, I said, "That's because you get your concept of Buddhism from old kung fu movies and you don't know anything about it." I've had someone yell down the hallway, "I'm not using the bathroom with that thing." And because of our dear president, those days are back again. But the sad thing is, and I've also seen this in communities, is people think that, well, okay, I said something, but I shouldn't have, but everything will be fine if I just let it go by the wayside. I said, no, it won't be. You can say, well, I'm a good Christian now, but did you ever tell that person you're sorry? I have done things and said things in the past I wish I hadn't, and I swallowed my pride and I said I was sorry. And as an experiment once, my dear sister, who's in the next room, she's a layout editor for a magazine now, she said, "Here, I want you to apologize to this person," someone named Leanne. I said, "Over something that she did to me?" She said, "Yeah, because she wasn't speaking to either one of us." And so I went and I found her at a public function and I apologized to her. And she fell all over herself forgiving me, even though she was the one who had done something. So sometimes just saying, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, but these people can't do that. These people can't do that. Most of these people, it's a weakness. Like empathy is a weakness. You know,
but I'm saying
they see that they can't admit that they were wrong.
So, but I'm saying if you're out there and you're listening, and if you've done something to offend someone, before someone hits you with the ban hammer, private message a person and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand." I've had to do that in real life, in the office space once, and it was somebody who had rode me hard and put me away wet for decades, and I finally snapped in a meeting and said something horrible in return. And so that's the important thing, is try and develop a sense of empathy. And I know that's hard for people to have, especially in our day and age, when they say, well, what do I care if they cut Medicaid? What do I care if I cut Medicaid, if they cut Medicare? What do I care if they cut Social Security? What do I care? And they only care if, I don't care, even though I'm an immigrant, I'm a legal immigrant, and they'll never deport me. Oh, they started deporting legal immigrants. And it's just, no matter what community you're part of, try and have a sense of empathy, because I've got my dearest friends in the world amount to, I can count them on one hand and still have enough fingers left over to pick my nose and hitch a ride. But those three people in that little bubble are incredibly important. And of those three people, two of them have literally saved my life. And so, and I realize there's this old poem, and I don't remember where I remember it from. It's a play, and I've had an undergraduate degree in theater before I came to my senses. And that the line is, "Once in Persia reigned a king." Let's see, one who it was about the king. It was called the King's Ring, fit for every change and chance. I had a ring it fit for every change and chance. Solemn words in the air are they. Even this shall pass away. And I've been parts of community that I really have enjoyed in the past. And sometimes it just, people have a life, and sometimes they just fall away. In one case, I was part of a World of Warcraft community that I really valued, and everybody was really nice. But, one day the person who was the matriarch holding the whole thing together, she didn't tell anybody she had cancer. And then one day she just stopped showing up, and we found out from her daughter what happened. So there have been, because when we preparing for this podcast, I racked my brains trying to say, what other really good communities do you belong to? In the real world, that little group of friends, and online, that's it. But I belong to others, but, they fell by the wayside. And I will plant my tongue firmly in my cheek and say I used to have a fleet in Star Trek I belonged to, and I'm the last one there.
I did want to bring up MMOs for a minute, because some of them, that's one of the reasons I have Jumpgate streaming on the thing, because for me, at least when it was actually live, the Jumpgate community was wonderful. There was very little negativity. Right now, not a lot of people play, so I don't really know. But I'd say Final Fantasy 14 is an excellent online. It's probably the best one out of all the MMOs I've played.
I've mentioned it before on the show, but yeah. I used to be a game admin for an MMO, and trying to, I'll say, trying to keep all of that chaos tamped down in a forum for a free-to-play MMO is more difficult than you would think. And there's a reason why I don't do it anymore. Part of it is because that the experience is important if you've actually done it, but you deal with some of the things that you deal with doing that, and you can lose faith in humanity very, very quickly. Because it's a free-to-play MMO, so some people are just going to be as toxic as they are in real life and not care about the consequences. Because, well, you can ban them, but then they might come back on a new account because it's free. There's very little cost of entry to that. And so some people just get it in their heads that they can be however they want, and nothing will stop them. And right. And weirdly enough, when you have a community that has a no politics rule, like we used to, our community used to have a no politics rule. But the problem with that, the inherent problem with that is, whatever the status quo is, if there's someone who's on the margins of that status quo, they're not going to feel like they have a voice. Because the moment you decide that you have a no politics rule, then you've also have to decide what those no politics are, and anything that crosses that, it's usually coming from someone on the margins who's probably saying, hey, I'm here. And if the status quo is punching down upon them, they can't even talk about that without being singled out and removed from the community for speaking out. That's one of the reasons why we don't have a free speech absolutist policy around here. Because, yeah, you have to moderate that.
You know, Brian mentioned MMOs, and especially Final Fantasy, and I've played a lot of Final Fantasy in the past, and I was never part of any community in Final Fantasy. We just had a small group of people that would play. But I think it's interesting that in that particular community, if you play a pickup group in WoW, it is often filled with nasty, edgy people. But if you play a pickup group in Final Fantasy in a dungeon and you say, first time here, I just don't know what I'm doing, everybody is really nice about it, helps you through it. And then if you ask that person why, you'll say, well, where did you come from? World of Warcraft. I'm an escapee from World of Warcraft.
So many people did. So many people did. I remember reading about the mass exodus from World of Warcraft. So we're coming up on an hour. I did want to mention one last thing. Did y'all know forums still exist, y'all? And there are some really good ones out there. I'm in several. The nice thing about forums that older people like me, you know, they're a little more sedate than Discord. But a lot of them, you could actually go on there, and before you even sign up, you could like see how well they moderate them. You know, because most of them are just public. I mean, you can't post anything, but you can read them. And there are a lot of forums for not just video games, for everything, photography, just about any hobby you want. There's probably a forum out there for it, and a lot of them are pretty good. I'm on like 3 or 4 that I go to every day. And so forums are another great place to find an online community that specializes in the things you like that can be pretty positive. But of course, you got to vet them and you got to see how they handle moderation. But the nice thing is you can do that before you even sign up. Don't forget forums exist. I know they're kind of fallen to the wayside with Discord now, but they're still pretty viable, I think. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to add before we close it up?
One thing.
Go ahead.
The last time I was on a forum, every time I dialed up to connect to the forum, my computer went.
Okay, that's not. That might be a bulletin board system. I think you might be thinking. I guess those had forums, because that's how I connected with people back in the day. Was bulletin board systems.
Yeah. Bulletin boards forums, absolutely. I belong to a lot of those.
Oh, I was in several ones in the Philadelphia area as well. It was so bad that my grandparents got me my own phone line.
Well, you never know. You know, I belonged to one of those forums once, and I won't get into the whole story, but at the lowest point in my life, when I was close to giving up, I met someone in that forum who had the solution to all my problems at the time. So you never know.
Yeah. So forums are great.
And it was a case of there was another forum behind the forum, and it said, well, you know, this is just a front for something else. I said, really? Well. And I said, here's how you get into the real forum. Oh, holy mackerel.
Wait, are news groups still a thing?
Actually how...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's sort of how we run our Discord, because you have to join and you go into the airlock, effectively, the docking ring. And if we don't vet you, you don't see the rest of the Discord. You only see a few dozen people or so who are just idling there for some reason. They're lurking
for some strange reason. Yeah, we don't. How many people are in there right now?
In this case, the forum on the outside had zero to do with the forum on the inside. And it was okay. It was just kind of a bland kind of forum, but it was for people who were at the time a particularly vulnerable part of society. And it's like, oh, somebody comes forward and says, oh, so you're part of this group. And they grab you and say, here's the access code to the real forum. Here's people who can help you.
There are like 30 people in there. The hell?
In our docking ring. Yeah, they never actually said anything, and because of that, they don't get to join the rest of the community.
I should do a pruning. It's been a while.
Maybe they just listened to the show and said, this sounds like such a great community, I've got to join it.
I don't know, because they come to the docking ring and then they don't say anything.
I don't go out to the docking ring because I don't feel qualified to vet anybody. That's why I leave it to you and Spaz.
Okay.
That's fair.
But I mean, it's just weird that there are 30 people in there who haven't said a damn thing.
To me, that's like a thing someone who started the whole group should be doing or been here the longest.
I should remember how to prune. There we go. Anyway, folks, so that's going to do it for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about a user-suggested topic called, we're going to talk about replayability. We take suggestions for topics, so if you have an idea for a topic, don't hesitate to bring it up on the Discord or in the comments. So we're going to talk about another broad topic, so we're going to have to figure that one out. And tomorrow we do more Truck Simulator. So I hope you all have a great day, everyone. Be safe, be well, take care of each other. Please, while you still can, get vaccinated. Not just COVID, but everything. I got to check. I'm probably going to be getting vaccinated for measles soon. Measles! Because apparently that's a thing again. Measles!
Yes, you can die from measles.
Measles. Don't mess around, people. Because I might have got. What they want you to do now, if you're older, is you check this. They check you to see if you still have the immunity, and if you don't, you get another shot. So I gotta go check. Thorsten, and
I have to do it.
That's fine. That's fine.
And wear your helmet.
And don't forget to wear your helmet. Oh, and thank you to our patrons.